Strategy and Policy meeting. I will ask Councillor Hill to open with a karakia.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi mahana kia koutou, e te miki a koe Chair Celia. Karakia tātou, whakatakita hau ki te uru, whakatakita hau ki te tonga, kia makina kina ki uta, kia taratara ki tai, I he aki ana te atukura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, a te hei, Māori ora.
Thank you. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Welcome everybody and welcome to those on Zoom. And just a reminder that when you're on Zoom, you need to keep your microphone muted and that the meeting is being recorded and it will be available on Council's YouTube channel. You are to turn off your camera and your microphone through breaks. Thank you. So just for the people at the meeting, the toilets and fire exits are outside. The media are present here. So hearing assistance hardware is available at the back if anybody needs it. So we will move on to apologies. So apologies from Councillor Mayling and an apology from Councillor Maru for leaving early, 10:30. So would somebody like to move? Thank you. Councillor Dowler, seconded Councillor Hill. Thank you. And I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Dixon from Golden Bay Community Board. And
yeah, need to put the resolution.
Oh, the resolution.
Yeah, all those in favour.
Yeah, oh, sorry, all those in favour. Sorry. Sorry, everyone. All those in favour.
Okay.
Good. Okay. Yeah, so Councillor Dixon, Community Board member Dixon and Community Board member David Armstrong from Golden Bay Community Board. And I think Councillor Greening is on Zoom. So we'll move now to public forum. And there's two people registered for public forum. One is Bruce Struthers via Zoom. And then there is Wai-west Horticulture Limited. So we'll start off with Bruce Struthers, and you have 5 minutes, Bruce, and there will be a ding of the bell when you're getting close.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. I hope I'm visible. I'm speaking about item number 9.6, which is on your agenda. It's a report from the Infrastructure Planning Group. And I would just like to make particular note of two items having to do with the master plan and Mapua. That is listed as on track, yet it has a new completion date of Q1 2025. There is another item about stormwater for Mapua, Ruby Bay, and Coastal Tasman Catchment Management Plan that is delayed. As you know, probably from a recent site visit to Mapua, as part of a workshop activity, that it's a coastal community. It's a gorgeous place, especially around Seton Valley, so it should be considered an outstanding natural landscape. And being a coastal community, it is subject to natural hazards. I'm not sure how one can categorize the master plan as on track when the outstanding natural landscapes and coastal plans are still in progress and destined to arrive much longer, in a much longer time frame. In other words, how comprehensive can the master plan be? I'm not sure how it can be categorized as on track, and I provided you a spreadsheet of significant events that have occurred in the planning process. and various welcome outreaches to the community to get their input on how their community will look in the future. I think from the summaries that we received of that feedback, we are being heard, which is a great thing, but I would suggest the delay is causing stress to existing homeowners. I know personally of two longstanding community members who overlook Seton Valley, who were very concerned on how it's going to look and the marketability of their property. They put the property up for sale. It was in a slow market. It took 2 years to sell. They have since left, all because of the uncertainty of what the results would be. So I guess in summary, all I've got to say is the team needs to be continuously providing progress reports to the community that will be changed dramatically by their plans should they be fully implemented. And I'd appreciate you holding the team to account for that. That's the end of my remarks.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. That leaves some time for questions or clarification. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bruce. So we'll move on to our next public forum, and that is Wai-west Horticulture Limited. So Julian, right, thank you. So is it just you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Julian Rain, Executive Chair of Wai-west Horticulture, and I also have James Patterson here, our Managing Director. And with me is Stuart Flowerday, who has a few words to say as well. Gordon Thomas will speak on behalf of the McLean family. So we are the affected parties in Lower Queen Street, Swamp Road, and this one party off McShane's Road. We perhaps if the group just puts their hands up, those that are here today. And there's obviously a few at work doing work type things that can't make it either. The group supports the TDC approach to lift the deferred status and enable light industrial land, but it is concerned that in its present form, it will not result in viable development opportunity. The proposed limitations on subdivision, land use, and build form will disincentivize investment. The group accepts the potential natural hazards, so we're not flat earthers here. But consider a way forward is to enable the landowners to future-proof their land from potential sea level rise through the development process rather than adopting blanket provisions that restrict alternative and innovative planning solutions. Sorry. The group does not support a prohibition on subdivision. This is important to ensure a staged development can proceed cost effectively. The group is concerned that the landowners in the scheduled area are not being treated like for like. And that means other landowners who already have the industrial deferment lifted have developed their sites. We'd like to point out that Ravensdown and NPI occupy the coastal side of Lower Queen Street and abut the coast and represent key regional infrastructure. The group would like to see TDC commit to protecting the coastal boundary of this stretch. The group has no knowledge of environmental trigger that would require development to cease and relocate, which is being pointed out. This is critically important and requires careful assessment to ensure it is robust and is based on science. TDC have adopted a contour-based threshold for land to be included in the scheduled area and subject to limiting provisions of PC 79. This threshold does not align with other coastal areas, including the proposed development of the airport. And we are mystified as to why Milton City Council has adopted 3.5 and TDC 5 metres. The recent housing business capacity updates in August 24 represent unrealistic provisions of industrial land to cater for the growing residential population, especially in Richmond. We think it is grossly underestimating the need. Wai-west is presently under apples in the area, both on freehold and leasehold land. We need to ensure a clear pathway for this land to continue, which is important. Reverse sensitivity effects have not been adequately considered in the consultation version of PC 79. Rural land use is not compatible with industrial zoning. Wai-west would need to rely on existing use rights, which has its limitations. So currently Struthers are building, or Ben Coman is building for Struthers a workshop right next to our boundary, which was an internal boundary before it was subdivided by the fields. Then it was sold separately by fields to two different landowners. The landowner that bought the area that's been developed has developed the 8 hectares right next to us, and essentially the staff walk out right next to where we're operating an orchard, which is rather difficult now with cross-boundary effects. The Ashfield block, while an important part of our wider operation, has clear potential for alternative land use, given its proximity to Richmond Township. We accept that the future of this land is not in apples, but development potential must be able to coexist with land that will remain under Wai-west ownership in the future. The group is disappointed in the lack of collaborative approach between TDC and affected landowners. If council is resolved to notify PC 79, the group requests an extended period for submission to be prepared, as 20 working days is definitely not long enough. So that kind of concludes my comments. Stuart, do you want to say a few things?
Thank you, Julian. You've heard the politically correct worded statement. Now you'll have to bear with me as I give a layman's version. For the last 40 years, I have ran through that building and joinery. In the top of the South Island, we have built in excess of 3,500 consented projects. The last time I was in this room was in 2004, when we received an award for environmental waste minimisation. We were runner-up to Fonterra that year. We have continued since then with our waste minimisation sustainable practices. We bought 4 hectares jointly with our son and daughter-in-law 14 years ago in Swamp Road. That was deferred industrial land. We took advice and were told that the deferment would be lifted when sewer and water was provided. After the Gibbons line went down Lower Queen Street, we applied officially for a sewer connection for our land after it sat somewhere in this building for several months. We were declined because it was being allotted to other land. The deferred road or the proposed road that went through this property disappeared off the planning maps with absolutely no consultation with the landowners. When that road disappeared, it took away the forward planning, the thoughtfulness of how that lower Queen Street land would be developed. If the land now, and we strongly support that it becomes industrial land, it is the right place for it. Growing, doing away with good grape country on the main road of Hope for industrial land, when there's land that Gibbonses have shown us that land can be sustainably filled and repurposed and built at a lower level. And all credit to Gibbons, what they have done in Lower Queen Street sets a standard for where we can go in the future. This idea that any land in the Lower Queen Street area lower than 5 metres on the contour land baffles me. Nelson City and Tasman District over the last decade have spent 32 million on a new building at the airport at a floor level of approximately 3.3 above sea level. You get out to Champion Road and we suddenly need 5 metres. I'm confused how the sea level rise is going to know which side of Champion Road to come up on and which side not to. It also shows to me that there has been a document on climate report done by the Nelson Airport in preparation for what they did. And it shows what good collaborative thinking can do if we took the same logic. The TDC staff would actually invite the landowners to take part in some workshops of how to progress that land. But no, they go behind closed doors and make rules that affect others.
Okay, thank you. We're actually at 10 minutes. So I think you had another speaker, but we've actually run out of time. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You can see it's a really important issue for us, and I hope our message has been clear, although I apologise for my nervousness at the start.
Thank you for your
And mine.
presentation. Thank you.
Is it possible for the documentation that's being read out to be, if you're willing, to be left copies for us? Is that what you're happy to do, or?
Yeah, I'll tidy it up and provide it for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now we'll move on to our open agenda, and I'll just call for declarations of interest for that. No. Okay, and there are no late items. So we'll move on to confirmation of the minutes. I need someone to move them. Previous minutes. Someone willing, thank you. Councillor Dakey, seconded. Councillor Kinnamoth, all those in favour? Thank you, moved. So we'll move on to reports now.
We have a lot of minutes, I think.
Oh, we've got the confidential minutes, sorry, of the committee held on Thursday, 15th of August. So is someone else prepared to move those? Thank you. Thank you, councillor Mackenzie. Second, councillor Kinnamoth. All those in favour?
Is that it for operation?
No, I'm sorry, that is it for the public forum. Yep. We do require that people be registered beforehand, but
Yeah, sure. They should have. Minute, Julian.
hang on a minute. Hang on. Yeah, no, do come. If you would like to have 5, you could have 5 minutes. It was just that the public forum from Wai-west was registered quite late in the piece, and I think there was just not realising that you actually could have had a little bit more time. So, well, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I said, you can hear me. I'm Graham Thomas. I'm a resource management consultant based in Richmond here. And I'm here today speaking on behalf of the McLean Family Trust, who are landowners at number 563 Lower Queen Street. I support everything that has been said to you today by the 2 previous speakers. The fact that McLeans do strongly support the uplifting plan change, but do have serious concerns about the prohibition of subdivision, and want to express extreme disappointment at the process that had taken place today. There has been minimal surface consultation for their particular property. I have been discussing with council since late 2000s, 19 odd, and worked in conjunction with the existing CVC building down there. That's right next door to the McLeans, for a subdivision when there was an indicative road through there. So we've been in formal discussions since 2020 for uplifting the deferment on the McLean's land. There was a formal lodged uplifting application made on the 22nd of August 2022. Since then, we've had to put up with a lot of procrastination, lost papers, change of staff, etc. The end result being that the position of staff was very, very clear that the deferment was going to be lost. It just wasn't going to be allowed to happen. Fortunately, they have listened and have put forward to you a proposal for retaining the industrial zoning down through there. We were in discussions with them for a few things. We put through a few comments. We had a discussion document that we could do some feedback on, which was very good. The position on subdivision being opposed to their position of basically prohibiting subdivision was strongly opposed and strongly worded back to them. We haven't had a formal response on that yet, so we don't know formally what has come through to council for your consideration. We hear things and we believe there are two options on the table for you. We strongly support keeping the subdivision, because not only this property but the other property owners all stand to lose significantly, particularly after the indicative roading was removed without any consultation and prior warning to any of the landowners. Now, the issues with regards to subdivision, the RMA and the TRMP work closely together. And under the RMA, there is a section 106 whereby council may decline the subdivisions that are subject to natural hazards. Without going into all the details, it's there. The staff have recommended that they go ahead and subdivisions become non-complying activities, which is the toughest form around, and it's a duplication of section 106 already. So we're suggesting to you it is too much of an overkill. It can be pulled back into a different status to make it a more workable solution, particularly when bearing in mind there are conditions there that, as of a trigger point, which is yet to be established, all buildings and activities have to be removed from that site. All buildings have to be prefab. No problems with that approach. But if you've got that approach, you're taking away the adverse effects, which addresses section 106, and also takes away any liability for council. But it provides the landowners with the potential ability to be able to do something with their land, which is the reason why they purchased that land in the first place. Those were the main issues, and I'm not wanting to try and put words into the rest of the members here, landowners who would like to have had their own say on it. And I'm just wondering if I stop talking now, whether or not there would be time left for anyone else. So you have to put up with me.
No, we're almost out of time. Good God.
Quite happy to answer questions, but emphasise we strongly support.
We've got time for a very short question. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Graham, perhaps you could just tell us how many landowners you represent, or you and Julian, and what sort of area of land's affected.
I'm formally representing one landowner, but quite a few of them asked me to speak on their behalf, which obviously the history of this piece of land is not relevant to them, but the subdivision is a big issue for them. So, sorry, that was one. I represent the one, and I'm sorry, Councillor.
Approximate area, but Julian.
4 hectares there. 4 hectares.
But the whole area is much bigger than that.
It is a lot bigger than that, Stu. So the whole area, Coral's probably the largest landowner. Coral, how many hectares have you got down there? Right. And Wai-west is 50 hectares. So I would think it's in excess of 100 hectares we're talking about.
And the difficulty is that the piece of land's been enclosed within what's called a scheduled area. So not all of the deferred land, zoned land, is caught by this scheduled site.
Okay,
Thank
yep.
you.
So I've got one more, Councillor Hill, short question.
Thank you. When you say a more workable status, what would you have in mind?
Well, under the RMA, there's various statuses being permitted, controlled, restricted, discretionary, full discretion, non-complying, prohibited. Any subdivision on good land, the first status is controlled, which basically means council has to give consent. If you meet certain criteria, I don't believe it, you would make it controlled. You're either going to be talking about restricted, discretionary, or discretionary. The simple distinction between the two of those is that restricted discretionary restricts things that council is bound to consider, and that was brought in to enable councils to go through and decide that which were affected parties and were not. And that was a result of a supermarket war in Auckland years ago, whereby one of them held up the other.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much for
Thank you
your
very much for that.
presentation, and thank you everybody, and we'll move on with the meeting. Okay, so do you want to start off? Who's present, and are you presenting this?
Kia ora koutou.
So just quickly, would you like questions at the end of your presentation, or you?
I won't do a presentation. I was just going to say I'll take my report as read. And just to reiterate that we're asking to publicly notify the proposals to classify 235 parcels of existing reserve land, most of them in the Richmond Ward, quite a few in the Lakes-Murchison Ward, and one in Wai-west Ward. And I just also wanted to say that the hearings panel, someone changed my resolution. You don't actually have to have 5 councillors. It was just thinking that you might want the 4 Richmond councillors plus the Lakes-Murchison councillor, but that's up to you how many you have. So, yeah, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for all the work you've done bringing this report to the table. I know it's been a huge and you spent a lot of time over a long time speaking to councillors and residents and constituents across the 2 wards. So well done on getting it to this stage. And I think the next thing is for us to appoint a panel to hear any submissions after it goes out. So I'd like to move that the resolutions, including that the panel be myself, Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Darkey, Councillor Ellis and Councillor Mailing, if I may, Madam Chair. Yeah, so.
And so would you like to suggest who would be the chair, including in
Councillor Ellis.
Councillor Ellis? Okay, so that resolution is up there.
Yeah,
and has been moved. So I've got somebody want to second, Councillor Dowler. All right, so we'll have it open for questions and discussion. Councillor Greener, then Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Through the Chair. Look, I'm very conscious this council may have to explore future possible asset disposals given the financial pressure that it finds itself under. So my question is, will this process make it harder or more costly to dispose of any of these parcels of land that you're proposing to classify under this process?
Through the chair. So all the parcels of land that we're talking about are already subject to the Reserves Act. And all it's doing is assigning a purpose to each parcel. So it's already subject to the Reserves Act. And we're not proposing, there's quite a few, I think there's like 57 parcels that are not subject to the Reserves Act that do form part of the reserves and Parks and Reserves network that Grant's team looks after. But we're not proposing to do anything with those. They're in one of the appendices to my report, so you can see which ones they're just there to, so you know that's the ones that aren't subject to the Reserves Act, but we're not proposing to do anything with them. So in terms of disposal, nothing is changing as to how it currently is. It's not making it harder.
Okay, so Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you very much through the chair. Look, I just want to acknowledge Councillor Bryant's comments in terms of thanking you, Anna, for all your work. I mean, you know, this is coming on the back of work you did in Wai-west reserves, and you must know the most about the reserves in this district than anybody in the council, I think. So so that's amazing. And also, you know, this is a really important process for our community because, you know, I recall with the Wai-west reserves, some members of the community, you know, they do really care about what type of reserve they end up being classified, because in a way that then kind of leads you to what are the activities that you're able to do in the reserve. So it is a really important process, and so yeah, thank you very much for all your work on it.
Okay, no more questions. I'll
I just have for you, if I may, Madam Chair, just in relation to Councillor Greening's comments or in question to Anna. I understand that it's very hard to sell reserves and there's quite a process to go through. And Grant, you might be able to help with this. I understand we're actually looking for another arm of council at properties we can sell, but that would be very unlikely to include reserves. These are more properties that are freehold parcels, I understand.
If I can just clarify my question that Councillor Bryant's raised.
Oh, no,
Chair.
no, hang on. We're just waiting for an answer from staff.
So, yeah, through the chair, my understanding is that, yeah, we're just looking at freehold land for that other process. Doesn't mean to say that some of those parcels are not managed as reserves, but they're not reserved under the Reserves Act.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So through the chair.
So Councillor Greening, are you wanting to have another question?
I just want to clarify, just because Councillor Bryan's raised it, so there's no confusion. I'm just conscious that I'm making sure that there is no new land being entered into reserve classifications that would not necessarily have to go through an extended reserve process to dispose of it, because all land can eventually be disposed of. But if we have parcels that are not reserve and we're looking to classify them, that's my concern, is that that land is more easily be able to be disposed of. But if we're not doing that, then that is fine, and I understand that we're not doing it.
Yeah, that is correct. Sorry, through the chair, that's correct. We're only looking at land that is already subject to the Reserves Act. We're not looking to change freehold land to reserve.
We have produced reasons for that. Yeah. Okay. So I will put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, staff. So we're moving on to heritage building options, and
Me, I'm speaking.
you're going to present that from there.
I'm okay here. You want me?
Yes.
Okay, through you, Chair. So the Waimea South Historical Society had presented both during a long-term plan and more recently to this committee, and presented some options around protecting heritage buildings. I guess it was quite a singular focus, particularly around Wakefield, and singular in terms of I suppose European settlement heritage buildings. Obviously, our focus is a lot wider than that as a council. So what I have done, I'll just quickly walk through this because I think it's important we just quickly walk through some of those key points that the society raised and officers' response to that. So the first one was around Wakefield Heritage Protection Policy. And the reason, and we're suggesting that that would form part of a review of the TRMP. And the report does outline that that's not in the short-term work plan. It certainly will be at some point. And we've certainly kept a list of properties that we feel sort of falls into this area. The next one was a request for the TRMP to identify Wakefield as a separate ward. That we don't recommend, as that's part of a separate process which goes through our representation review. And the next point is around defining a heritage area in the Wakefield village. Similar to the first point, it's part of the TRMP and it's not in the current short-term work plan. But I want to come back to some of these because there's a couple of processes here which can be followed. The second one is, the next one is around a heritage go-to person in the council structure. We sort of have that in terms of Tanya, but probably doesn't deliver the expectations of the society in that regard. But certainly Tanya has, as part of her work programme, skin in the game in terms of this piece of work.
Sorry, just to interrupt, could you just say Tanya's second name, or because councillors may not know actually?
Sorry.
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah.
You don't have it, that's all right.
Yeah, no, hang on, just bear with. Sorry, I've got a mental block at the moment. I'll come back to that one. Sorry.
Come back to it.
I shouldn't have a mental block, but I do have a mental block because it's that time my age. The next point was a robust liaison structure within council. And I'll come on to that in a minute because really it refers to some of the research I did around the previous structure, which included a heritage subcommittee, which as you can see, the report ran from until from 2001 till about, I think, around 2007, and then that council that wasn't continued. And when I sort of started looking into some of the minutes from that meeting, it was clear that there was probably two pieces of work they did there. One was to collate heritage buildings within the district, and I mean that right across the district. And also to distribute grant money, which we currently still retain. There's about a $5,000 grant on there, which was, from what I could see, was primarily driven about notifying Heritage New Zealand of heritage buildings and going through a application process with that organisation, which I've outlined their role in the report, which very much talks about national significance. And I've also flagged that in Wakefield particularly, there's about 7 buildings and about 128 district-wide, which are recognised by Heritage New Zealand. And the final piece was around a rates remission. I think that was more of an incentive for heritage building owners to have their buildings included either in the TRMP or through to Heritage New Zealand, so some form of incentive. So we've provided the pros and cons of all that. One of the recommendations we are following through, though, is around a advisory group. And I think the more I looked into this, the more this is about, and all this is going to be community driven. If the community doesn't buy into having property being part of either the TRMP and recognised through that obviously puts some limitations around that building in the future. And again, through Heritage New Zealand, which probably imposes even greater restrictions in terms of redevelopment or whatever happens to that building. So that really requires those building owners really to buy into this process. So what I felt the advisory group would do, at some point it would form. I don't see it as something that would form immediately. I think it would need to form part of the TRMP, and I guess would do the work that we're not resourced to do, which is really that investigation of heritage buildings history and provide a case for why that would be included either in the TRMP or would flow through into Heritage New Zealand classification. So that's a long-winded way of saying this. Take any questions.
Thank you. We've got someone first. Councillor McKenzie, Councillor Bryant, Councillor Hill and Councillor Dakey.
Thank you very much. Look, I really do appreciate the fact that you've listened to the Waimea South Historic Society, who obviously have very active members and a huge amount of knowledge and have already made significant contributions to things that have happened in the district, including Richmond with the historic panels in the main street. So I really appreciate the fact that you've listened to them. And, you know, it's very interesting because, you know, we have the Audit and Risk Committee this afternoon, and on that agenda is actually a draft of the council's annual report, which I've read, and you would struggle to find a single reference in that whole annual report for anything to do with our heritage assets. And I actually think the idea of setting up an advisory group will just help to elevate that work within the council. And so I really do support this initiative, and thank you, John, for actually grabbing this and making something happen. So yeah, I will be supporting the resolution. In fact, I'm happy to move it when it comes down to it, which I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. Moved by Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Bryant.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm second to happy to the resolution and speak to it now. Yeah, I think this is a good step forward, promoted by the Historical Society out there at Waimea, as South Historical. Wakefield has a long history and heritage with one of the oldest churches in New Zealand, the Church on the Hill, and one of the oldest schools in New Zealand, and quite a number of heritage buildings. In fact, one, the old library, which this council put money into upgrading. So it would really be great to see it become a destination for heritage. I've just Googled Handendorf in South Australia, where we visited in 2017, which was a real heritage village, one of the earliest in Australia for German settlers. Now they're saying they get 1 million visitors a year there. I'm not sure we want 1 million visitors a year in Wakefield just yet. But certainly our heritage precinct is a real draw card to people from all over the world. So I think it's a great initiative. The $5,000 grant, we've had that previously. It's probably something we need to promote more, because I know there has been landowners in Wakefield and outlying areas that have received that grant. It did used to be limited to $500 per person. I'm not sure if that's still the case. And it has helped people get restorations and things like that underway. So really good work, and thank you, John, for bringing this to us. So yeah, happy to support and look forward to more visitors in Wakefield.
Thank you, Councillor Bryant. Now, Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the society and the work they do, and appreciate that there's a particular historical aspect to the village at Wakefield. It's good to have the perspective there of 7 of 128 of the heritage sites, buildings are at Wakefield. It's nice to have a sort of district-wide perspective. And of course, I have the whole business about how we separate out cultural heritage as Māori sites and places of living, which of course have a different, the evidence of those is quite different to building, though it's still very present, just not so known by people. I think about what to even look for. And then we talk about heritage, meaning European heritage. So it's a slightly odd thing to do in a way. And it presupposes, I think, that there was a period in which Māori were living here, and we'll call that cultural heritage, the evidence of those sites. And then we just flipped into some point at which we had European settler development and buildings, and there was no sort of overlap at all. But of course, there's a very significant, rich period of overlap in there, to suggest that actually the formation of towns and villages back in the day had no involvement of Māori people is sort of ludicrous in a way. So I just have some disquiet around our definitions of heritage and how we approach them. And of course, we have a lot of reference in our policies and some in the plan and in practice around cultural heritage. So yeah, I just noticed a little disquiet in me around how we frame all of this. I'm not quite sure of what the problem is in terms of the wider things. So I'm just separating out Wakefield as a village, seeking that acknowledgement and recognition and developing that as a destination. It's fantastic. But that doesn't translate immediately for me in my mind around that there's a big issue in the district around how we're approaching heritage buildings more widely in terms of the council approach. So I guess I haven't seen in here anything that shows me the extent of the problem in terms of how we're relating to heritage buildings. Are we not offering support? Are they not registered? Are we not in our planning processes? Are we not alert to those buildings? And of course, there are many other, the other villages that have really significant heritage too. Collingwood's got some pretty rich history there. So I can't quite get that the problem is, and I get that we've responded to something that's been brought to us, but I wouldn't want to think that we are coming up with something in a response to just that, where there isn't, for me, an account of that there is a wider problem.
Okay.
And I think unless I saw, I guess, the terms of reference, like to not know how this thing would function or what it would cover, or that staff wouldn't, staff have a responsibility to attend to these things as it is. So I'm not quite convinced yet.
Thank you. I'll ask staff to respond. Points you brought.
Totally, and I was really clear with the society that this has to be a district focus, and I was also very clear that our focus isn't just about European settlement as a council. So there are bits. So there is, like I said earlier, there is a very singular focus with Wakefield, but you've alluded to European, whatever we call these historic buildings. Whenever we use that, I'll use that term today, has to be right across the district. So I think you're always on the money with this stuff, and I think the terms of reference is the biggie. I think what I was looking for is an appetite to continue the discussions initially with Wakefield, but I did talk about broadening the membership, that it has to cover the whole district. And the intent was to come back here with a terms of reference. And when those discussions are carried out, I think it become a bit clearer as the problem we're trying to fix. And it may be we don't have a problem, but I think we should continue with the conversations. But I do think we need to invite a broader bunch of people around the table and not just singularly focused on Wakefield.
Just as a follow-up, and so would this be a voluntary participation group, or are we looking at a cost here in terms of forming something up?
I absolutely would suggest this is a volunteer-based organisation, and it has to be community-led. And I think the connection officers providing to the organisation is where there will be some time spent, but I don't envisage that this would cost council any money in terms of payments to individuals.
Thank you. Councillor Dakey.
Very happy to second.
Okay, seconded. Councillor Greening.
Thanks very much, through the chair. Great to hear support around the table for heritage. It was a real battle a couple of terms ago in terms of protecting public heritage, like the Golden Bay Grandstand. So that's reassuring. There is a tension, obviously, when you step into private ownership. So it'll be interesting to see how that is dealt with. But I'm also conscious of the financial pressures on this council. And while I heard there are no costs to be paid to advisory group members, what is the anticipated cost for council in terms of having to wrap around staff around this?
I can't put a number against it, but there's time. There's a counted time within our current budgets, but it's literally taking time away from other pieces of work. I really think when we have the conversation with the community groups, we'll get a clarity as to what that really entails. I think as you get into things like any TRMP work or working with Heritage New Zealand, obviously there's pieces of work that officers will need to do in there. But equally, the direction from this council could be that it's led by the community, and officer involvement's literally about setting a meeting up. So I don't see this as particularly onerous personally, because I don't feel the group needs to meet on a regular basis. We just need to come up with the terms of reference. So and that will then define, I guess, how many hours we put into assisting the group. So I can't really put a figure on it for now.
Yeah, so I mean, that would be really useful to know before we commit to setting up an advisory group. It's kind of like cart before horse, putting the advisory group and then deciding what the terms of reference is and what the cost will be. And then that's the point where we decide whether we want an advisory group or do another way. I'm conscious that we do protection of heritage trees. Do we have an advisory group for that, or is that done differently?
I might need to get some advice on that, Grant or Barry. Sorry, just 1 minute, Councillor Barry's just come to the table.
Yeah, through the chair. In terms of historic buildings and historic trees, I mean, in terms of assessing them, there's criteria. So Heritage New Zealand have criteria around how they assess historic buildings and whether they list them or not. And there's a methodology that's used to identify trees as well, that our Parks and Reserves team uses. So in some ways there are similar processes, but that's around the significance of the tree. We don't have a committee for trees, no.
Yeah, so I just wonder, and maybe we want to revisit this once we know what the costs are and what the terms of reference are, whether we should be, rather than setting up a structure, setting up a process where public groups who are interested in advocating for heritage can bring a submission, or so we set up a process where the public can engage with this committee, because this committee doesn't have a lot of work. I mean, there's only 3 or 4 reports on this agenda today. Where they can bring their recommendations to council, staff assess them. There are some there's a process, a criteria that we've set, very much like the trees, where we can then go through that criteria, and this committee can assess whether they support it or not. And if it involves private land, then obviously the private individual is contacted and provided feedback. So we have a process as opposed to an advisory group.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. Look, I'm just going to interrupt you and say that number 3 in the resolution says that a further report will be coming to the Strategy and Policy Committee. So this is only the beginning. This is just a start.
You're setting up an advisory group now, though, right? Approval of an advisory group.
No, there is a further report to come to this committee. Okay.
So it endorses the formation of a heritage advisory group, irrespective of what report's coming. That's what I'm suggesting. A little bit cart before horse. Maybe that we should be asking for the report, and then that report recommends, if it decides to, establishing an advisory group or establishing a process, depending on what's the most efficient way of doing it.
Thank you. Well, this resolution's been moved and seconded, and if we want to change, the people who the mover will have to change it.
I just think
number 2.
Remove
number 2.
That's a better way of doing it, and then you'll see whether a process is better, because a process could involve a 6-monthly item on this agenda, which looks at heritage buildings on the recommendation of societies and individuals who have gone through a process very similar to the heritage trees, which goes to the TRMP. The individuals also have the opportunity to go straight to Heritage New Zealand and go through that process, more expensive, more time consuming. And we have the same status as for heritage buildings in the TRMP that we have for protected trees, which is just a recognition process.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Greening. So it's been, I've got some more questions. 3 more people to ask questions.
So can I get clarification whether item 2 is going to be dropped and folded into the report back?
do the mover and the seconder want to stick with that, or do they want to change it so that we don't endorse the formation of a heritage advisory group at this point?
Thank you. Through the chair, I would agree to changing number 2 to say supports in principle the formation of a heritage advisory group with the terms of reference to be confirmed. So what that's saying is that we think the idea of it is really good, but in actual fact, we just need to understand more the terms of reference for the group, and that's the work that would be done between now and when a paper would come to the Strategy and Policy Committee. So I would agree to amend it to that.
Thank you. Does the seconder agree to that?
I do.
Thank you. So we've got an
Through the chair, can I just get clarification?
altered resolution there.
Yeah, so will staff also look at not only that, as you know, obviously it's indicated as the preferred process, but also whether we can also see if a process as opposed to formalised group is a more efficient way, because I'm just conscious that I don't want to be creating structures that will require more resources when we're all under extreme financial pressure. We've already had workshops on this already.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
I've got that. Thanks.
so as long as staff understand that they're not just bringing
Councillor
back the advisory group, that they're looking at other processes as well, that's what I'm trying to get clarity around, because it's not clear in that modification. That's all.
So staff response.
Yeah, through when we were developing the Tasman Environment Plan that's currently paused, through our early consultation on that, we saw community nominations for further heritage buildings. And so we have done that. And we have quite a substantial list of nominations for potential heritage buildings that need to be assessed. We currently don't have budget for that. The number on the list suggests we're looking at probably close to $250,000 to do those assessments. And that's part of the TEP that's paused. So we have got that process in play. But until we restart that process and we appoint budget for it, then it's currently paused.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, so I've got more questions. Councillor Kinnamoth, Councillor McKenzie and Councillor Hill.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I support Councillor Greening and his idea here. And I don't agree with the amendments to clause 2. I think the word principal should be taken out and the option of forming a heritage group. By putting the word principal in there, we are giving some direction to the staff to saying that we feel that there should be a heritage group advisory panel set up, where I think that should be an option, because having a panel to do this work, I think, is not necessary. We've got guidance from Heritage New Zealand, and we've got a separate frame set up from them. So I think the word principal should be taken out and the word option replaced in there.
So we're not getting clear. I think we'll just carry on with the questions. Councillor Hill.
Thank you. I just want to be clear that I am all about heritage in all its forms completely. I'm the first person into a museum. I'm the first one to read any little card about any little old plough. But so I'm not against heritage at all. For me, this is a process matter. And it's not clear to me. I feel like we've got the cart before the horse, pun intended. But in terms of we're agreeing to something, we don't know its purpose. We don't know the terms of reference. We're looking at the next strategy and policy meeting as we're going to formally appoint the group at the time that we're going to agree the terms of reference, where we'll understand the purpose of it. So between now and then, then there's going to be some process go out to the community, inviting people to put their hands up to be on the advisory group where we don't know the terms of reference that's been agreed. So I just think the process is mucky, and that's my main concern about it, really. And I just want to understand what the purpose of it would be, how it would function in relationship to what's happened and hasn't happened within our council here. And I take Councillor Greening's point about the grandstand in Golden Bay. So that was a heritage building. It was missed by staff was going to be demolished, you know, so there was a problem. Answer to my first question, what's the problem? But I appreciate something concrete from Barry, from you around, it's great to have something concrete here around us, around what's on hold in terms of in the system. So I just don't think we've got this right in terms of cart before the horse.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. I'm going to suggest that we let this lie on the table and that another report come to the next Strategy and Policy Committee, because people have raised concerns about the process, and I think some more clarity would be valuable. And I think that council is pretty much sort of silent on this work at the moment and is not visible in engaging with heritage issues. So it may well be that we need a more detailed report about the process that's going to work moving forward. And whether any councillors are involved in that is another question. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. I'm really disappointed about that. I have to say, I feel as though I've got full confidence in the staff and the leadership. They're hearing what's being said, and I just think that leaving it on the table, it's for no purpose whatsoever. So I'm all about making progress and not churn. And I hear Councillor Hill's issues, but John replied, you know, I got the view from what John said that it was an all-encompassing look at our heritage. I'm perfectly comfortable. So you know, if that's the path that the council wanted to go down, I'm disappointed in that.
Okay, I'm actually going to put this to the vote as it is up there. All those in favour?
Aye.
Madam
Against?
Chairman,
This, yep.
a point of order here, I think. I've asked a question to change the wording up there, and I have been ignored. I haven't had any response to my question.
If the resolution had not passed, then you could have brought you know, a change for another amendment.
So through the chair, to change the motion on the table would need the agreement of the mover and the seconder. If that wasn't provided, then the option would have been to move an amendment, which would need to be seconded, and then the amendment would be put first.
So I'm happy to hear from you now, Councillor Kinmoth.
Well, my understanding around this table here is the mover has suggested some changes. I'm unaware that Councillor Bryant has seconded those changes.
Through the chair, yes, he did.
Yes, he did. Sorry, you must have missed that.
Okay, I'll just cease.
So I'd like to ask, we'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? Against?
Chair, can I just get a clarification here, because I'm getting really confused now with what's going on.
Against?
Can I get a clarification, please, on what's going on here?
Through the chair, I've just shared the motion that is being put with you. That's the changes into, yeah.
That's really useful. I'm sorry, I was confused. I thought the initial amendment was in principle. Then I thought Kinmoth suggested that the words should be options rather than principles. And then and I didn't know whether the change was made or not.
It rests with the mover and the seconder. And
yes. So that's what I'm asking.
So the mover and the seconder agreed to changing the resolution to include in principle. We've put that to the vote and that has passed.
Yes, so what I'm saying is I raised the issue, that change was made, I understand that. Then Mr. Kinmoth, Councillor Kinmoth raised a concern and suggested the word options. I didn't hear that being put to the mover or seconder as to whether they wanted to change principles to options. So I didn't know what words were being presented to vote on.
Would the mover and the seconder please confirm that what is on the table is what they intended to be put?
Correct.
And was Councillor Kinmont's suggestion considered or just ignored?
Councillor Kinmont's suggestion would have needed the agreement of the mover and the seconder, and that hasn't been provided.
Was that put to them though?
Thank you, Councillor Greening. We're going to move on now.
Break for tea or?
Oh, yes, carried. Carried. So we'll break for tea and be back here at probably 5 to 11 of the schedule, and we're going to go into confidential committee now and deal with that topic.
Yes.
Yes. What,
Okay.
5 minutes. I just have to. Hey everybody, I'm just calling the meeting to order. We've had quite a long session, and we've got audit and risk at 1 o'clock, and is 20 minutes long enough for lunch, audit and risk members, because we could actually cover off our last item on strategy and policy, which is the activity report. Now. Okay, right, okay, so that's 15 minutes. What is this? Who's going first?
Through you, Madam Chair, I had a whole song and dance show, but I'll cut it down. My report is 109 through to pages 109 through to 117. I just want to very, very briefly introduce Michael Goldingham to you. He's our new team leader, infrastructure planning and policy. So previously David Arsenault was in that role before we went over to the rivers. So it's that role. The other thing is the speed management plan. This new speed rule was issued this week. And we're still looking at it, but I think it means we need to reconsult on the council's approved speed management changes and do a cost benefit analysis, but we will come back to you with some options and timing around that later this year once we've been able to confirm a few things from NZTA. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
So have we got any questions? Councillor Kinmont?
I'm very aware of time. I thought the government indicated that they still wanted to carry on with speed reductions around schools.
Through the chair, correct, they did. But it was that made up a portion of the proposed speed limit changes the council wanted to action. So we've still got the rest to do. Yeah.
Councillor Greening?
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on Mr. Struthers' line of questioning on page 113, 114, which is the Ngāpua master plan. Can I also make the observation that it would be useful when dates are changed that are included maybe in that little green box where it indicates what was the original date and what the new date is, so that we are actually keeping account of these shifts, because clearly these shifts turn something that was orange or red into green. So that would be useful. But maybe you could highlight or answer the question that Mr. Struthers was trying to deal with, which was the interrelationship of the Mapua Master Plan and the coastal plans and the natural landscape plans. And he felt that some of these couldn't be delivered because they were dependent on others.
Through the chair, so that's outside of the scope of the Mapua Master Plan, but I will hand over to Barry. You can talk on that. We noted that earlier.
Thank you.
Just a couple of things. So that yes, the Mapua Master Plan is not a statutory plan, but it will inform our statutory plan changes, and they include the likes of rezoning, anything we might do around landscapes. But I would note that we do have landscape overlays, and none of those include any areas around Mapua. There is a change to the coastal environment line, but those changes will come later. So they are, I guess, in some ways, they are considered through the Mapua Master Plan, but they're implemented through plan changes. Yeah, they're drafted at the moment.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, Councillor Hill, is somebody prepared to move?
I'm happy to move the report being received.
Seconder? Anyone willing to second? Councillor Kinnermoth? Second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Any more questions or discussion?
Can council staff
Councillor Hill?
confirm? Oh, sorry.
Councillor Hill?
Well, it's a represents a tremendous amount of work, doesn't it? And here we are. We've just had a big sort of a big sesh, haven't we? And here we are looking at a whole streams of work that we're gonna just brush over and away. But I suppose I want to acknowledge just the complex area of all of this, given the reforms and the just the amount of work that you're all having to manage and to find ways to, attend to all these various areas. So I didn't want to be remiss, I suppose, in not acknowledging that.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, and you may have covered this, Dwayne, while I was having a side conversation with Richard. So I completely apologise and shut me down if that's the case. So did you comment on the speed limit situation?
Yes, I did, Councillor. Essentially, what we communicated via email the other day, that we'll come back with options and advice on how to proceed, and once the team have confirmed some stuff with NZTA.
Thanks, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, through your chair. Can you tell me what page this report finishes on? I just want to make sure I'm on the right report.
Through the chair, my part finishes at 117, and page 118 is where Barry's team kicks off.
Sorry, I'll wait for Barry's report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So no more questions about Wayne's report,
Yes.
and we'll move. Oh, sorry, Councillor Greenham. Councillor Greenham.
I asked an original question, which was putting the original date and then the amended date, but I didn't get an answer to that. Will staff be doing that?
Oh, sorry, you caveated that with an observation. So I was like, you didn't see me nodding, agreed, acknowledge your point.
Thanks. That's
okay, so that will be done in the future. Thank you.
Okay, so no more questions. Someone's moved. Oh, so Barry, have you got something more to present for your report?
Yeah, well, I'll take the report as read, but just a couple of things to note. There's a couple of changes since the report was written. One to do with Plan Change 81 and to do with hazards, and they both relate to just pressures on staffing. So in relation to Plan Change 81, we had indicated going out with a draft this side of Christmas. That will be delayed until early next year. We are starting a bit of an awareness campaign around that plan change, and we're looking to release a high-level pamphlet around the 16th of October, and we'll give that pamphlet to councillors ahead of that going out, and that's ahead of the workshop we have on it. We are working with landowners, some landowners, and most of the landowners are already aware of this because we've been through the future development strategy process, which has tagged that land. And just to note, with PC81, it also will include changes to the regional policy statement from learnings from listening to Plan Change 29 in Nelson. And the other work stream is the hazards information. So we were planning on having an awareness campaign this side of Christmas. But again, due to staffing constraints and pressure on staff, we're pushing it out into early new year as well. So that's it. Haven't taken questions.
Can I just add one additional comment, which is that we are contacting all landowners directly and ahead of that pamphlet coming out. So the pamphlet will be distributed widely, but we will send a letter beforehand to the affected landowners so they've got prior warning.
Thank you. I'll note Councillor Walker. Have you got another question?
I do, thank you, through Chair. It's to do with the Port Motueka structure plan. Do we have someone that can?
Yes,
you can answer that. Oh yeah. So I remember way back, probably back in May, in fact, and we talked about how it would be really good if councillors actually were kept abreast of what was happening and were included. I don't know if I've missed something, but I'm very much in the dark over it. And I know I have had a meeting with you, Kim, and I've also given you contacts for our community, yet that community member has told me they've heard nothing. They haven't been engaged. So at what point do we get some involvement before we go out to consult, or at least hear what's going on with our community? Thanks.
So who's going to answer that?
That certainly hasn't been forgotten about as part of the process. It's just we have had a number of delays, which has probably taken a couple of months, to be honest. And we're now in the position where we can wrap that project up. So it's a delay. It's not anything's been missed. So that project will be commencing very soon, picking up from where it left off.
Just for clarity, through you, Chair, that was the appointment of the consultant, wasn't it? So there will be something coming out to elected members around the process going forward.
Correct. Yeah.
So when will we expect to see that roughly?
Well, there's been a little bit of a difficulty with the consultant that has been appointed that we didn't feel they included sufficient expertise, and so we had to go back. We only had one consultant apply, put in a response to our RFQ. We didn't feel they had sufficient expertise, so we've had to go back to them and ask them to bring on board sufficient expertise in the form of marine engineering, and to actually understand it was a bit landscape heavy, shall we say. So we're trying to get the right expertise on board, and then we'll be able to fix the process.
Thank you. So I'll put the resolution, and it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried.
Kara ki tātou, tawhiri manga hua o te tai ao, mai papa tuanu ki o tākoutu nei, kia rangi nui e tū iho nei, tūturu whakamaua kia. Tina, hui e, kia ora.
Thank you, everybody.